What up? Peace and blessings. There's this guy on Instagram and I love him. He always says peace and blessings and kombucha. He's just like making fun of everybody. But I love it because we take life way too seriously. I realized that I should probably tell some stories about before I got into van life and what that was like when I was living in my car / vans, I guess. And this episode will focus on the slightly tricky situations of the van situation. A little background, I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in a Christian household. I was very sheltered, went to college, unsheltered myself for the most part, and then I headed off on a road trip. I started in Colorado, went up to South and North Dakota. I hit Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago. I spent some time in Chicago because my sister was at a hospital there for some time. And then I went to Michigan, fell in love with Michigan, still love Michigan, almost cried in the freaking chair store that I can't in Zeeland, Michigan. Herman Miller, in the Herman Miller, like the Herman Miller, not plant, but their headquarters is in Zeeland, Michigan. And like, oh my God, I literally like stayed in their parking lot, stole their internet, and like tried to find a job at Herman Miller as like a janitor so that I could work my way up. But I didn't. And then decided I wasn't done. I went to Canada, then to New York, up to Maine, down to Boston. Boston, I stayed with some friends. And then they were going to a horse race situation. I want to say it was in Kentucky. And by the way, this is when I was 22. I want to say it was in Kentucky. And then I like started going that way and realized very quickly in like Rhode Island that I wasn't going to make it. Like I did not have enough money. Okay. Like none. Right. And the money funds were gone. And well, enough for me to like, I could stop and I could spend some money, on food and stuff, but that was it. And since I was sleeping in my car, that was fine. I ended up in this town called Putnam, Connecticut. And Putnam's just like this tiny town. It's so cute. And then I was like, this is it. This is great. They had a little pottery shop and they had a knitting shop that I would go to. And then I was there for not very long. I got some temp jobs. I signed up for like a temp agency and got some temp jobs, like stuffing envelopes, just like random jobs. And then I went to church. I went to a church up north and met this lady. And this lady was like, do you need a job? And I was like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I fucking need a job. And then she was like, okay, great. Meet me at this park and ride at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. And so I slept in the park and ride one exit away and then met her in that park and ride and like got ready and then met her in that parking ride. It was dark out and she took me to this before and after school program. One thing you should know about me is that although I tolerate children, I was never like the babysitter kid. I was never the, oh my God, give me that baby kid. I still am not. I do like babies, but I'm not going to like run up to somebody and ask me to pet their belly or hold their baby but the first time I ever like really held up like a brand new baby was like a couple years ago. So I'm just not like a kid person. I do like 8 and up. They're great typically because they're like, you can like tell them stuff and they understand it. Obviously, I like my nieces that aren't related to me, but they might as well be. I applied for this job. I got this job. It was a before and after school program, teacher, like the lead teacher, paid miserable. And that day, I was going to tell you a story about like other things. This is, you know what? It's not scripted. I saw a video yesterday about like people with ADHD, which I have severe ADHD. and have since I was 6. Like, I was diagnosed when I was 6. And they just wing everything. It just works. And then they have this confidence because they can wing it. And you know what? That's true. Anyway, before and after school program. Got this job. It was in Griswold, Connecticut. It was, it was okay. And so then I started looking in the newspaper and on Craigslist for places to live, for rooms to rent. I found this room. I called this lady. I was like, hey, is this room still available? And she called me and she started talking to me and she goes, well, I have this one lady that wants to rent the room, but something's going on and it's going to be a complicated situation. And I don't know really what I want to do. And she was kind of just like talking. And then she pauses and she goes, well, I don't think I want her to even come. You should just come. And I have a good feeling about you. I think you're going to have the room. And I was like, oh, okay. And so she hung up and then she called me back and she goes, so here's the thing. The house is in Griswold. I'm in Hartford because she was a nurse. And I'm pretty sure she was a nurse. She did something in medicine. And she goes, I'm in Hartford. The house is in Griswold. The lady who is going to come over and look at the room, her phone number is in Griswold on the counter in the kitchen. And nobody's at my house because her boyfriend at the time was a carpenter. This is 10 minutes after I called, by the way. She goes, could you just drive over to my house, go to the kitchen, it's unlocked, and just grab the piece of paper and send me the phone number so I can call her and cancel this interview, essentially. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Sure, that's fine. I can do that. And so I tried to find this address, cannot find it. It is impossible to find this house, even though she had a picture of it. I could not find it, and I got completely lost. And she ended up, thankfully, finding the phone number and then directing me where to go. And I met her when she got home that night, and she looked at me, and I was like, okay, well, that sounds great. We came to an agreement, and she goes, well, where are you living right now? And I was like, oh, just around, And she goes, you're living in your car, aren't you? And I go, yeah. And she's like, you're staying here tonight. Cindy, love you. She was very impactful to me. Cindy she opened her house to me with the most loving, warm arms and it was just great. And she had a dog named Chewy, and I think it was Chewy. Anyway, he was getting old and he couldn't get on the bed, but he slept with me every single night. And he would run and try to get on the bed and he couldn't make it. And then he'd run more and it would take him 4 tries to get on the bed. She had horses and chickens and ducks. We had all the eggs we wanted. That was the first time I ever had farm eggs, all the time. I hated that job. The kids were good, but before and after kids, before and after school kids in this area, it was in the poorer part of Connecticut, which is fine. It doesn't really matter. The kids, they just got dropped off, and a lot of them were from separated families, and a lot of them had one kid had a really high temper, and you had to literally hold him down. I remember I had this stool because I paint and I do art and stuff, and I had this stool and I called it the stool of power. And it was painted, and as long as I was on the stool, nobody was allowed to talk. And if a kid got on the stool of power, they had control, and it did not work that well. I also remember coming in the first day, and the person I was taking over for, she was yelling so much at these kids, and I was like, I'm never gonna yell like that. And oh my God, I yelled so much. But regardless, I think it was a good experience, I met some great people. I didn't get paid very much. I've never really gotten paid very much. I got one job, first job I had in California, in Colorado. Nope, that wasn't right either. In Washington, and the second job were really good, but they were also terrible. It's it's just in your brain. And the first time I ever went to Aldi was in Chicago, and that some friends took me there, and then after that, I started going, the only place I could afford food was Aldi, right? And because I made so little and I worked so little, I feel like I worked way too little. And so I survived on like $25 a week from Aldi, and that's what I ate. I ate cheddar brats, eggs, cheese, bagels. And then, to be fair, Cindy would always, like, she liked to share and cook food, so I tried to, like, help with that, and, like, sometimes I would cook too, and I'd make, like, pot pie and all that stuff, so that was a great time. If you haven't caught yet, also, I've lived in all the states to start with C: Colorado, Connecticut, California. I went to school in California, in college. Hi, my name is Becca, and something special about me is that I've lived in all the states to start with C. I think that what I really wanted to talk to you about this story, or this, like, adventure-ish, I guess. Well, there was a lot of different things that happened in Connecticut, right? So, first thing was that I met Dot, and she owned a ceramic studio, and I'm pretty sure it's still there. And she was wonderful. She didn't judge me at all, which was great because I was ridiculous. And then second is I met this lady. For the life of me, I cannot remember her name. And she was so amazing. She just kind of, like, found out that I liked art. And she was like, do you want to go to New York? And we were going to, like, go to New York and go to the Met and, like, do all those fun things. And we ended up not being able to because it was under construction. However, she was just so kind to me and, like, took me out to lunch. And I met this other artist who was also so kind to me. And he just hung out with me. Like, we would just hang out, you know? And then I, like, met these other people, and we went to Boston one day and just, like, went around Boston. And I truly believe that the person I am not only comes from, like, how my parents raised me, but how I have been treated wherever I've gone. And I've gone a lot of places, and I've been in a lot of different situations, you know? And I mean, like, sometimes I've been better off financially, sometimes I haven't been. I remember specifically at Christmas time, I actually went back to my parents' house for Christmas, and I think that might have been, like, the only time ever that they paid for me to fly somewhere. Anyway, I got an iPad for Christmas that year. It was like an iPad mini, and it was like a huge gift. And then I went back, and I was, like, really struggling financially. I felt like such an imposter, like, having this iPad. Like, at the time, I was, like, going to a Bible study and stuff like that. I'm not very religious now, but, you know, such is your past, and I think that you should talk about your past. And I do believe that a lot of the reasons some of these things happened to me was because I was at church, and I was doing things, and I was, you know, like, going to different places. Like, churches are a very good place to find a community, and that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, I just felt such an imposter having this, like, iPad, but not having enough money to buy food, you know? And at some point, I thought that I was going to hopefully, you know, live in Connecticut. And so I was looking at different places to live, and I ended up not. I ended up actually applying for a job in Seattle, and that's how I went to Washington. But, yeah, just, you know, like, struggling with that identity crisis. I always tell people that I started up high and then have continued to just degress as far as financial status is concerned. I am lucky in the sense that I've had 2 jobs. One job that has contributed to a 401k, and I also have parents that later on, after, like, college and stuff, they kind of, like, walked me through how to invest a little bit, but also I had a lot of interest in it too, so I had to teach myself a lot. But, you know, my dad's always there if I have questions, and so I've invested just a smidge, but I can't take any of the money out because it's all retired stuff. But I'm lucky, you know. If I retire, I can live for 1 year. I can really live for 2 if I really stretch it, you know? Rice and beans, you know what I'm saying? In Putnam, Connecticut, I met so many great people. One of them was Chris, homeless Chris. He was the guy that walked around to all the different businesses like on Main Street, and he would like water their plants, help them out, do little jobs, and maybe they'd toss him a couple bucks. And he was probably in his 50s, late 40s, 50s at the time. And me and him just kind of like had this weird little friendship. He called me one day and he goes, Becca, if I gave you gas money, I think he said, if I gave you $50, will you drive me to Hartford? And that was like an hour and a half. No, maybe it was 45 minutes. It was 45 minutes. And he says, will you drive me to Hartford? And I go, sure, let's do it. Just keep in mind, I'm 22. He's 50. I'm going to say this before I start with the rest of the story. I would still trust Chris with a lot more than most of the people that I've met in my life. He, at the very depth of his soul, was a kind, giving human being. And but when you hear this next part, you'll probably be like, what the fuck? So I'm driving him to Hartford, and he was going for a psych eval, I believe, for the state, for disability. And, you know, he's telling me about his story. He used to be a painter. He's got like all these different stories that he's telling, and then he like casually is like, yeah, I almost got arrested. I got arrested for attempted manslaughter for his like son-in-law because he did something and he almost killed him. And I'm just like listening to this, and in my brain I'm just kind of like, okay, like don't think too much about it, it's fine. Like, people make mistakes, people do things. That doesn't mean that they're going to do them now. We get to the meeting, we go in the meeting, he does his test, pretty positive he failed. We went and got pizza, and then we drove home. He gave me $50, and we had like a really great relationship for the rest of my time in Connecticut. And even when I moved back to Washington, he was like, he called me one day and he goes, where are you? And I go, well, I moved to Washington. He goes, why didn't you take me with you? It's so much nicer out there than here. And that always made me giggle. But it was great. If I keep doing this, which, by the way, I have a very bad track record of like continuing to do things because I'm really bad at following through. But I think I might do this because I'm on new meds and they're like doing pretty okay, I feel like. Anyway, if I continue to do this, you will find out, or you will realize that I've ran into and had interactions with a lot of people that most human beings do not treat like humans. I've literally just given my leftovers to Josh, who was one of the homeless people in Washington, and some guy walked past me and goes, why would you give him food? And I was like, because he's a fucking human. So that's kind of how I live my life and what a lot of my values have been surrounded by. And I'm very grateful for that. And has it put me into a lot of situations that maybe weren't the best? Yeah, for sure. Would I change it? Absolutely not. Wouldn't change it for the world. I do have a funny story about Connecticut, though. This was before I got the room at Cindy's house, and I was sleeping in the public parking lot across from the ceramic shop. The public toilets opened up at like 8 a.m. every morning, or 7 a.m. And I just like went in there in the morning. There were those like metal ones that are so cold, and it was cold. It was like October at that time, so it was like so cold. And I go into the restroom and I look down, and there is a foot-long carp, a foot-long fish in the toilet, still alive. And he's just like kind of like swimming. You could tell he was depleted, you know, like not very much energy. And I like freaked out, and I walked across the street. I went into this ceramic shop and I was like, I need a bucket. There's a fish in the toilet. And so I filled it up with some water, and I went back, grabbed the fish out of the toilet, put it in the bucket, walked across the street, and threw it in the river. And I like put the bucket back, washed my hands, and then I just like in my brain I'm like, oh my God, I just stuck my hand in a public toilet to get a fish out of it. Like, the things you do, you know, without thinking. It couldn't have gone down the pipes. Like, I don't know. There's some thoughts that may have been a reason why the fish was in the toilet, but I don't know. I think that I was there right when it opened, but who knows? Who knows? Man, Dewey. It wasn't Chewy, it was Dewey, the dog. Anyway, if I didn't mention, this is my hammock. It's the shit. But previously, since then, I have bought a different hammock for a friend, and it was so amazing. I will link it because it was $60 with the stand. And her stand's a lot better than my stand. I'll also link this microphone. It's pretty great if you want to like do a little microphone thing. I also got the swimming suit. It's got dinosaurs on it. See that? It's so cute. Anyway, I don't know if you heard from the last video, but I found out that I can be like an Amazon influencer thing, and I can earn a little bit of money by linking different products. So I shall do that. I'll just link my store. Actually, I'm going to specifically link the hammock, though. It's so good. Best purchase of my life. I'm not even kidding you. Not even kidding you. Like, before I had this hammock, what was I even doing? What was I even doing? It folds up into a reasonable size and fits in the back of my van. Everywhere I go, you can have a hammock. I don't need a tree. I can just set it in the grass. So good. We'll continue with stories at another time, I suppose. I will, eventually, I think that it would be fun at some point to write a book, but I've never been good enough to like be able to write it down consistently. This might be a better option, is to like tell the stories and then use it as like a video journal almost. So that was Connecticut. That was, it wasn't very long of a time. That was 2012 to 2013. I want to say that I left in May from Colorado. Nah. Yes. No. Yes. May. March. April? Something like that. And then ended up leaving in February of 2013. Coo. Stay classy.